The original devouring parent suffocated their children or ate their children for fear that the children would get in the way of their goals. This later developed into mothers who so desperately wanted to live vicariously through their children because of their own unmet psychological needs that they would suffocate them and not allow them any kind of freedom. They would run and rule every aspect of their life. There is an ancient Greek fable of Kronos, who is the Titan father of time itself. His father, Uranus, was like the original demigod and was birthed by Gaia, Mother Earth herself. And Uranus was a terrible tyrant. And so his 12 children decided to revolt against him with the help of his mother. And so 4 of them, who held the 4 corners of the earth, pinned the father's arms and legs. And Kronos was the only one brave enough to wield a weapon against his tyrant father. He cut off his testicles and threw them into the sea. And Kronos then took the throne of Uranus and ruled over the golden era where he was in charge of all. However, things were not good forever because there was a prophecy that foretold the same way Kronos had turned on his father, his own children would turn on him. And this drove him crazy. And in the ancient Greek mythology, when he finally had a kid and his wife presented him with his first child, he took the child and swallowed it whole. Oh, don't worry, it gets worse. He did that again and again to each of his children until finally his wife, grief-stricken, tricked him, feeding him a rock swaddled up in clothes instead of the baby. And the baby that survived was Zeus himself. And that is how Zeus was allowed to live. All that to say, the Greek mythology is absolutely bonkers.
Bruh.
Beyond that, this is really the first allegory of what came to be known as the devouring parent. This was further explained by Sigmund Freud, whose psychoanalysis is very questionable at this point. But one of his contributions was the idea of the all-consuming mother. This is a mother who is so overbearing and all-encompassing and just saturates the life of her children that she metaphorically and sometimes literally suffocates them. The original devouring parent suffocated their children or ate their children for fear that the children would get in the way of their goals. This later developed into mothers who so desperately wanted to live vicariously through their children because of their own unmet psychological needs that they would suffocate them and not allow them any kind of freedom. They would run and rule every aspect of their life. Think stage moms in the modern representation. And yet, all of it came to the same goal. There was some kind of life that the mother wanted to live, that either she would live vicariously through her children or suffocate her children out of existence in order to be able to live her own. That is the original devouring parent, Kronos himself, ate his own children to make sure they would not get in the way of his own goals. Now we have a culture of abortion, the new devouring parent who sees the idea of getting rid of an unwanted child as a means to secure your own future, your own financial stability. It's seen really as another step of birth control. Something very interesting happened. It was a landmark moment. Vice President Kamala Harris is going on a tour, and it's called the Reproductive Rights Tour. And she became the first vice president or president to ever visit an abortion clinic. We're going to look at a moment from her time at the Planned Parenthood.
Which is to understand it is only right and fair that people have access to the health care they need, and that they have access to health care in an environment where they are treated with dignity and respect. And please do understand that when we talk about a clinic such as this, it is absolutely about healthcare and reproductive healthcare. So everyone get ready for the language. Uterus.
Wow.
That part of the body needs a lot of medical care from time to time. Issues like fibroids. We can handle this. Breast cancer screenings. Contraceptive care. That is the kind of work that happens here. in addition, of course, to abortion care.
Okay, so she goes through her list. She's like, here's what happens here. All good things, right? Reproductive health. We do screenings. We do family planning. We do check-ins. Yeah, I mean, some abortions here and there. At the abortion clinic, we do a few abortions here and there. Why is it such a landmark moment for a vice president to show up at an abortion clinic, and in an era where for 50 years now, abortion was, for most of that time, the law of the land through Roe v. Wade? We've had a huge pro-choice contingent. We have progressively moved from safe, legal, and rare to shout your abortion. It's something that's celebrated. It has been one of the cornerstones of what the left side of politics has run on year after year after year. Why has no one in the vice president or presidential office ever gone here before? Here's a historical view of what's going on here. You guys know that through science, logic, reasoning, and philosophy, I have landed at a pro-life position, both theologically, philosophically, methodologically. I cannot get on board with this. It is not even remotely scientifically controversial that life does, in fact, start at conception, and any way to try and arbitrarily say when that life could be ended creates an untenable argument that has branches into the reality of everyday life. When you make arguments for ending a life, you are making arguments for murder, and we have about 1 million murders a year happening through abortion facilities. Many of these are heartbreaking situations, and if you've ever heard me preach on this, you know that before we can really express our opinions on this, we have to try and understand the absolute trauma of especially a young woman becoming pregnant and having her whole future in question and living in a society that pushes her to the abortion clinic as the obvious next step so she can get on living her life and achieving her goals. But at the same time, it just isn't that simple. There are repercussions to this, and there has been a push from many presidents and vice presidents for abortion as healthcare, all these euphemisms as a societal good, and yet no one has stepped foot in one until now. And here's the truth. If the pro-life side is right, and abortion is actually the murder of about 1 million babies a year, mothers who are blessed by God to be able to produce life, and instead of living out that purpose, go in the antithesis of that purpose and end the life that God has put inside of them. If that is correct, and that's a correct assessment, I believe it is, as someone who is pro-life, then this is the greatest atrocity that is happening in our time. It is like 20 Holocausts over the last 20 years, and he's doing it. He's making a World War II reference. You see, what has happened is leaders throughout time, like the leaders of countries, have maintained their distance from the atrocities that they're overseeing. This is like a cardinal rule of being in leadership. The leaders of the mafia did not go and kill people themselves. What they would do is they would use euphemistic language to get the message down the chain for the lackeys at the bottom of the hierarchy to actually go pull the trigger. I think we need to take care of that guy, right? I don't do accents.
Wow.
I think, this guy is really, I think he needs to be taken care of. I don't even know what accent that is, but I'm trying it, right? And then that message goes to the next layer, and that message goes to the next layer, and then the guy at the bottom gets the nod, and he goes and pulls the trigger, and eventually he gets to climb up the ladder a little bit. Even leaders of countries, Emperor Nero, who was persecuting and killing the Christians, he would not put his hands on it himself because leaders want plausible deniability. They want to protect their image, so they maintain these things at an arm's length. Pol Pot and Joseph Stalin, who both oversaw genocides of their own, millions of people killed, they kept the actual atrocities at an arm's length. Hitler never visited a concentration camp. His biographers will say he did not want to be seen at the scene of the crime. He had an image to uphold. He cared nothing about human life, but that doesn't work well if people think that about a statesman. And so he used euphemistic language. He didn't call it genocide. He called it a final solution. He didn't say we're sending people to concentration camps. He called it resettlement. He didn't say we're going to kill them. He said we're going to get rid of a problem. Euphemisms, right? Plausible deniability, holding things at arm's length. All leaders throughout time have known this. You don't actually go to the atrocities that you're overseeing. You let the little people do that. You let the abortion clinics actually do the dirty work, and you stand at a distance, not calling it what it is, but using euphemistic language like reproductive health care and women's rights. And so now we've broken the barrier, and Kamala Harris showed up inside of the building where mothers are allowing the babies inside of them to be dismembered, to be killed. Leaders throughout time have maintained their distance from the atrocities that they are overseeing, but leaders should have to come face to face with the evil they are allowing, which is why I think, in an interesting way, the vice president going to an abortion clinic is maybe the best thing that she could do, is actually face the music. You know, David, who was a man after God's own heart, he made a heartbreaking decision, an evil decision, when he not only slept with a married woman and impregnated her, but then he stood from a distance and he sent a euphemistic message to the front lines for everyone to pull back except Uriah, leaving him exposed. And so, I mean, David didn't really kill Uriah. He just put him in the exact situation where he knew he would get killed. And he kind of just carried on living his life until Nathan, the prophet, came to him. The Lord sent Nathan to David, and when he arrived, he said to him, there were two men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very large flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except one small lamb that he had bought. He raised her, and she grew up with him and with his children. From his meager food she would eat, from his cup she would drink, and in his arms she would sleep. This little lamb was like a daughter to him. Now, a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man could not bring himself to take one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare for the traveler who had come. Instead, he took the poor man's one lamb and prepared it for his guest. And David was infuriated with the man and said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die, because he has done this thing and shown no pity, and he must pay 4 lambs for that lamb. And Nathan replied to David, you are that man. Nathan forced David to come face to face with the atrocities that he was actually overseeing, and in David's case, directly causing. And we need this, and our leaders need this. They don't need to stand at arm's distance and allow atrocities to occur on their watch. If they're going to do that, and they're going to call these atrocities a net good, then they need to face the music. And so maybe you're thinking, she doesn't think this is a bad thing. She's believing what she says. I'm not so sure that that's accurate. And I'll show you why. It happens right at the end of the clip that we watched. Watch how she lists what this clinic offers, and then watch her cadence and her pace as a little addendum she sneaks in that they also kind of offer abortion services.
Issues like fibroids. We can handle this. Breast cancer screenings, contraceptive care. That is the kind of work that happens here, in addition, of course, to abortion care.
So it just gets right there at the end. Like the number one thing Planned Parenthood does, abortions. That's where they spend their money. That's how they resolve unwanted pregnancies 90-something% of the time. And you can tell as it's just kind of snuck on the end there. It's like interviewing a kidnapper, and it's like, so what do you do? And they're like, well, I mean, I buy lots of candy. I change the oil in my van. I'm really good at blacking out windows. I drive a lot. I drive through neighborhoods, and sometimes I throw a kid in the van. It's like, oh, right. So you're a kidnapper, and you kind of throw this thing in at the end, and she's there. She's in the building, and we are spiritual beings, and we live in a spiritual world. And I think at some level she's coming face to face with the reality of what she's doing. And she has broken that barrier. She's broken that wall. She is the second most powerful person on earth. And she has walked right in to the main atrocity that she is not only propagating, but also helping to oversee. And all we can do is pray that this issue continues to change more and more for the dignity, value, and protection of all people, including the people who are in the womb. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed so you can stay up to date with all new content. And if you want early access, exclusive content, and monthly live Q&As, make sure to check out patreon.com/Clayton Tyner.